views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Bronxnet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, we go front and center celebrating the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. We reflect on how the church and religious institutions have actually shaped our culture, our policies, as well as our politics. Plus, is the church and other religious institutions losing their significance when it comes to shaping our communities and our culture? And lastly, we're going to talk about how our guest does a great job of balancing his faith while serving in government. That's up next on this edition of Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And as always, you can catch Perspectives every week here on Bronxnet's Channel 67. We also invite you to stay connected to us on our social media platforms. How do you do that? Well, our station website, of course, Bronxnet TV. And then if you're trying to reach me personally, my professional page on Facebook, Daren C. Jaime. And then if you're looking on Instagram and Twitter, DC Jaime 23, there you'll get some information as well as also some inspiration. Well, coming front and center on our show today, a 2021 Pew survey found that Black Protestants as well as Catholics are more politically and civically engaged than those who are religiously unaffiliated. Now, that same study also showed out that we are seeing more and more people deeply engaged when it comes to government and then also religion and politics. My guest on this particular episode is an accomplished senior executive. He also has built networks across government officials as well as community stakeholders. This includes the management of various programming and outreach initiatives that have been designed to engage religious and African-American leaders. His experience in government relations and public affairs covers diverse, strategic environments. And in 2012, he joined then President Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign as a field organizer in Virginia. And I must admit, with a personal point of privilege, he and I have done some great work in New York State, serving in both religious and government affairs. I'm talking about none other than the Reverend Clement James, who joins us now. And good to have you, Reverend James.
Well, hello, Bishop. How are you? Thank you for having me. First, let me say it's such an honor and privilege and joy to be on with you. As someone who's young in ministry and also in politics, getting familiar with you over the past few years, you always wonder, wow, I wonder what it would be like to join your show, and knowing you travel back and forth a lot. And I truly believe that God do order your steps, and it's an honor to be with you today. You are by means literally changing lives throughout the city and state, and it's an honor to be here with you today.
No, it's great to be with you. It's great to be with you on this kind of platform. You know, usually we operate another platform, but it's great to be able to sit here and talk to you about really a very important thing, which is really religion, government, and and faith-based institutions. And when we look at it right now, there is this disconnect, and then there's also the connect. We always hear about the separation of church and state, but you've been actually able to marry the two. So give us a little bit about how you feel faith-based, institutions can still be involved in governmental affairs, because when we talk about governmental affairs, we're really worried about the people. And when we talk about governmental affairs, these are the people who care for the people.
Yeah. I think that many times folks will bring up the topic, church and state and church. However, I think you need both. As a person of faith, born in the church, dad's deacon, grandfather deacon, and uncles who are pastors and things of that nature. I grew up in a church, and I see from the houses of worship perspective, their job is to do the work into the community. If you look at the walk and life of Jesus Christ, he spent his time in the community, walking in the streets, healing people, feeding people. And now, what Jesus did in the communities and in the streets is the same thing. What we're doing from the government perspective is providing resources by aiding and partnering and working together with the houses of worship. The government needs the church, and it's great to have the church to also work with the government. It's a perfect marriage, and both need to work together. And I'm not going to get into this today. I'm not the senior pastor here. You are, and you know that there's many people in the Bible who were preachers, but also politicians. You look at the kings in the Bible, like King David. So these roles do merge together, and you do a great job of weaving government and faith together, Bishop.
Well, the thing about it is when we think about what we do, and I think about today, we celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's a person that actually was the preacher, because before you ever talk about Martin Luther King, there's that Reverend Doctor that actually comes before his name, which means that he had the religious, the faith-based, right? And then you talk about the Martin Luther King who had social impact in dealing in the areas of social justice and community transformation. And so the two actually have this marriage, but what do you feel are the keys in order to have this successful balance? Because you've been able to do it in your time of being, and I got to give you special props for the work that you do, because you've been able to actually marry the two and keep both sides afloat.
Yes. Speaking of Dr. Martin Luther King and on Martin Luther King Day, growing up, I looked up to Martin Luther King. When I found out he was a member of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, I too said, I want to be an Alpha, which I am. And I'm actually doing this interview from Atlanta, Georgia, because I visited my brother and his fiance, but I studied the work of Dr. King, and knowing how Dr. King was able to preach love, justice, and save souls from the pulpit, but then would go into the communities and the streets and teach and preach the same message. And that's what the folks who are listening on today, who may not be a believer, Christianity can be so simple. It's literally helping another person, saving lives, loving on the folks. And that's the greatest example of Christ, is the work that we do in the community. We have to go beyond the four walls and do the works and walks of you, Bishop, of the Dr. Kings. These are the things that we have to continue to do. And what Dr. King and his principles of his nonviolent campaign, that's what we're all about. We just want to love one another and help them and encourage them that the church and the community needs each other to make these things happen.
Yeah. And when we talk about things happening, I want to get ready to go to break, but when we come back, I want to talk about how the church is actually galvanized the political community, because we know in many ways when it comes time for elections and things of that nature, politicians come to the church. We can talk about that in a second. So let me take a quick break, come back with more. The Reverend Clement James, our guest here on Perspectives. We'll be right back right after this. Continuing our conversation with the Reverend Clement James as we celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King holiday this week. Want to get the opportunity to bring you in, Reverend James, to speak about this because I spoke before the break about how many times we see politicians and they're very much galvanized around election time. And when you need those votes, you go to the church and people are coming to the church. And there is a great amount of influence and weight that the church carries within the community. So from a government perspective, give us the lens of what it looks like behind the scenes in government and how they view faith-based institutions in regards to their work.
Well, I often say this on many of my conversations, Zooms, meetings with my colleagues in government and also my colleagues in ministry. I personally believe that the church, houses of worship, are the cornerstone to the communities. It's literally the bedrock of the communities. If you want to get back in the day, if you wanted to get a message out, if you wanted to spread the word on something, you would go to the church, and because that's where the people are. And when the people come together, they're able to get the message out. So government, politicians, especially during campaign time, look at the church as an extremely important stop along their campaign route, is because that's where the people are. Where can you go and find hundreds of people gathered together in one setting? Where can you go? Outside of a mall or a theater, you go to the church because that's where the people are. And then not only the church, but the politicians strive to make better relationships with the faith leaders, because the faith leaders actually have the power, actually have the influence and authority over the communities. Even in the communities where members may not go, people will listen to the pastor or the faith leader over somebody else because they know that they're a trusted voice in the community. For example, during the vaccine time, many houses of worship open up their doors to allow testing and vaccines to take place because they know that they can trust their houses of worship. Some folks would rather go to the houses of worship than to a pharmacy, than to an urgent care or a hospital, because if my pastor said this is good for me to have the vaccine, then I will trust my pastor, I'll trust the lay ministers, and I will attend the church to get my vaccine or testing. And I think that's my answer, is that the cornerstone of any community is the house of worship. And I'm not sure who's watching this today, but just because we're in a pandemic and some houses of worship may not be at capacity, don't be fooled by the power that they still have beyond their streaming services and platforms. The church still has the power, will have the power, and will always be at the forefront of any community to help get the message out on any issue.
Yeah, I've always contended. I mean, when we talk about feeding the homeless, we talk about taking care of people within the community, daycare, housing, education. These are things that government has now been involved in, and particularly in the Black church, the African American church, we have traditionally seen when it's come to government, housing, all of these things. These were things that were actually done in the church before government actually decided, to take these things on. Yeah. And then to take it a step further, when you talk about houses of worship and the work that goes on, we know that many times they'll do it on a volunteer basis, whereas now, if a check is involved, the grant is involved. Before there were ever grants and before there were ever things, churches just did this right out of their own pockets.
Yep. Yeah, and many churches now will self-fund their own projects and initiatives. There's some houses of worship that I worked with, and I worked with houses of worship from Montauk, Long Island, all the way to Niagara Falls. And I can tell you that there's some houses of worship that will try to make things happen by themselves before asking to partner with the government. And I think if the resources are there, it's okay for houses of worship to work with the government agencies because the resources are there. And why not take advantage of those things? I think the most successful churches and houses of worship that I worked with in my time in government are the ones who are engage civically and politically because they know what resources that are out there to bring to the church. The folks who shy away from getting involved with government, I feel as though may have some challenges, but it's also good to navigate and knowing your local elected officials, your councilmen, your alderwards, your county executives, your town supervisors, your mayors. It's important to know your assembly members, your senators, and who the governor is and the Congress people are, because it's important to have those relationships. So when things are being passed, legislation and laws are being passed, they too are going to impact the people that you shepherd.
Yeah. And I think about the criminal justice system. And when we look there, we talk about many people have been engaged. And that's why I say people, I mean pastors. We're looking at the cases of Ahmaud Arbery. We're looking at the cases of George Floyd and others, and beyond the Reverend Al Sharpton, beyond Jesse Jackson. You've got many local pastors. You've got many people, particularly in the Black church. And we also know, it's a multi-ethnic and a multi-generational group of people who are really stepping up to be involved more now in the criminal justice issues. When we think about Dr. Martin Luther King, he didn't just have Blacks, but he had whites and others as allies in the movement. And when we look today, we see 40, 50 years later, the same thing occurring, but people are acting like this just happened.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we could spend hours talking about this. And I think what's happening now, and I was privileged to speak at the National Action Network with Reverend Al, the president and founder is Reverend Al Sharpton a few weeks ago. One of the things I said was, we have too many social media activists. They follow hashtags. They move from issue to issue, but their feet are not planted anywhere. And if you, like you said, Bishop, when you look at these, you look at the foundation of Martin Luther King, bringing the different communities together, the different religions together. This is nothing new. It's that we've been doing this. It's that the folks who are now getting involved, primarily after the wake of the murder of George Floyd, people are now wanting to get involved, but they're not. I find now that they're not committed or dedicated to the issue. They just move on to the next topic. What we need to do is take the senior statesmen, the senior preachers, and the younger activists and come together and understand that we all can do this work together.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break and come back more with the Reverend Clement James. And when we come back in the next segment, we're going to talk about him real quickly and what he's doing and what he's up to. And you'll be interested to know. Coming up next here on Perspectives.
Bishop, am I doing okay?
You're doing excellent, bro. So listen, let me see. Curl, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. I got 6 minutes for the last segment. Is it okay? So CJ, is it all right now if I go ahead and mention that, we work together doing stuff with the governor, and you can talk about your past stuff and what you're going to do now?
Yep. Because this is going to air on Monday, right?
Curlew?
This will air starting Tuesday.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, and I'll announce my new role here as well, and that's okay. It's official, and yeah.
Okay, great.
All that. Yep.
All right. And 3, 2, 1. And we are back here on Perspectives, continuing our conversation as we talk about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and the work in social justice. The goal of this show is to talk a little bit about faith and how it intersects with government. And none other than the Reverend Clement James, our guest here on Perspectives. And for those who don't know, he's very highly involved in governmental relations. And our most recent work together has really centered with him working under former New York State governor and also the new governor, Kathy Hochul, but former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul. And let's go back there for a minute because you had a great career there.
Yes. When I met with the governor's office a few years ago and they asked what I wanted to do, I said, well, I love politics, I love community, but also I'm in ministry and I want to do both. And so they created this role for me, which I was the director of faith-based outreach under the former Governor Andrew Cuomo. And then under Governor Kathy Hochul, she appointed me to become the director of African American Affairs, also including in the faith-based component. And they realize and they see how important it is to have a faith person in the office for many reasons. One, to provide counsel and guidance to my team, my coworkers, and to the governors, and to also have a relationship and tie into the communities. And over these last 3.5 years, I've done tremendous work in this role by bringing all walks of life together, from our brothers and sisters of the Muslim faith, of the Hindu faith, of the Sikh tradition, and all these other faiths, walks of life coming together, issuing one cause. It's such a beautiful thing when you see many people come together and issue and care about the issues that they care about and advocate and help pass laws and lobby the state. And for me to be in the middle of it all, it has been such a tremendous experience and something that I will cherish for the rest of my life when I am able to work with all walks of life. And growing up as a young Black boy from Kingston, New York, born in the Baptist and AME Zion and Pentecostal tradition, I can say this job made me a better person because I been more exposed to other faiths that I would not have traditionally been exposed to. And it's been such a beautiful, wonderful experience these last few years.
Yeah. And so now for you, life has shifted a little bit and you're going on to a new role in a new position. So why don't you tell our viewers, as you're excited, and I know we're excited for a new shift for you.
Yes. Well, as you know, I've worked in the governor's office 3.5 years, and it's been a great time. And I had some conversations with the senator's office. I recently accepted a role as senior advisor to the United States Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. So for the folks who are watching and listening in, just know I'm still here doing the work for the state. I'm just now on the federal level. As senior advisor to the senator, I will be focusing on housing, on economic development, on criminal justice, working on African American issues, education, and of course, the faith community, are all these things that I will be working on behalf of you on the federal level as the senior advisor to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. And, I'm looking forward to see what's next. I think that God has blessed my steps. And honestly, I would not be able to have this role if it wasn't for the partnership of all of you. Each and every single one of you who are tuned in today has helped me to become a better person and to catapult me into this new position. And I know that the prayers that you all prayed for me over the last 3.5 years, I solicit your prayers as I go into embark on this new journey. And I can't do it without you, and I won't do it without you at all.
And before we go, I want to get your take for somebody who's watching and says, listen, you are up my street. This is what I want to do in life. This is how I really see this is a vision for my life. And I want to be able to work in government and still maintain my faith-based position. What advice do you give somebody who wants to enter into this kind of world?
One, show up. It's that simple. Show up to community board meetings. Show up to events. Now things are a little bit easier because many things are happening on Zoom or they're happening on some type of social media platform. So if you want to get involved, just participate. There's meetings happening. Volunteer. There's always something going on monthly, as you know. Today is Martin Luther King Day, or we're around the Martin Luther King time, and what we will come across are volunteer opportunities. We're getting ready to head into Black History Month. Many politicians, elected officials, will be doing events. Just show up to their events, get involved. That's how you can get involved and get engaged. And if you still need help with getting involved, my social media information is there. Reach out. I'm happy to help. Bishop is here. He'll help you connect any way possible. We were just talking before the show about having a continuation in government. Even though no longer I'm in the governor's office, I made a commitment to Bishop that he'll still have the same resources for his people, the same relationships for his people, just because I'm not there. And that's what this is all about, is having a continuation of government and making sure it works, that there's no hiccups, that the people are still getting the issues that they need taken care of.
Well, we want to thank you, the Reverend Clement James Jr., who is definitely an asset to the community, has really been a great help to a lot of faith-based institutions in New York State, and not just faith-based communities, but literally the community of New York State. It's been an honor really to serve with you and work with you. I definitely say that on a professional level, and then also to have you as a guest here on the show. Looking forward to seeing what's happening in the year 2022. We know great things are already in store for you, and we believe that actually great things are going to be in store for New York State because where you are. So thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, my brother. It's great to have you here, and we got to have you back in a short amount of time. Thank you for joining us again. Thank the Reverend Clement James Jr. for being our guest here on Perspectives. As always, you can watch us every week here on Bronxnet's Channel 67. And for people who don't know, and he said, he made the reference, listen, I am a pastor of a church, an AME Zion church, in addition to it. And so we do multiple things. I'm a pastor, I'm a journalist, and then also definitely a dedicated community activist. So you never know who a person is. So that's why you got to take the time to get to know somebody, find out their perspective. And like I always tell you, you share your perspective. They share theirs, and you never know. It might make a difference and a connection in your life and in the life of somebody else. I'm Daren Jaime. Until the next time we meet, take care, God bless, and share your perspective.